crash landing on a dangerous world. The fiery streak of Jonathan Cross's starfighter cut through the atmosphere of the unknown planet, his hands gripping the controls with a practiced urgency. The mission was clear: gather intelligence on the alien forces known as the Vari, send the data to the human resistance, and make it back alive. That was the plan. But the universe, as it often did, had other ideas. As the cockpit cracked and strained under the pressure of atmospheric entry, Jonathan knew something was wrong. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and the control panel flashed red with warnings of impending failure. The air in the cockpit was thick with the acrid smell of overheating metal, and the sound of the ship's engines sputtering in distress filled the small space like a dying animal's last breaths. A sudden jolt sent him hurtling forward, his seat restraints digging into his chest as the ship spiraled uncontrollably. His helmet cracked against the dashboard with a sickening thud, blurring his vision. Blood oozed down from his forehead, stinging his eyes, but there was no time to be stunned. The stars outside the cockpit window twisted and distorted as the ship careened toward the surface of the alien planet. Jonathan's training kicked in. He slapped at the controls, trying to regain some semblance of control over the rapidly disintegrating ship. The hull groaned again, louder this time, as a series of explosions shook the craft. His heart pounded in his chest as the ground loomed closer, and all he could think about was getting out, getting to the ground, surviving long enough to fulfill the mission. With a final, desperate move, Jonathan activated the ship's emergency eject system. The seat shot upward with explosive force, hurling him into the air, the world spinning around him. The next thing he knew, he was tumbling through the air, free-falling toward the thick alien jungle below. The canopy rushed up at him, a dense blur of green and brown. His parachute deployed with a sudden jerk, pulling him upright, and for a fleeting moment, Jonathan felt a brief sense of relief. That relief was short-lived. His harness tangled, the parachute caught in a strong gust of wind, and Jonathan crashed violently into the treetops, the branches snapping under the impact. The world went black. When Jonathan finally regained consciousness, the first thing he noticed was the stifling heat. His breath came in shallow gasps, his vision blurry and disoriented as he slowly tried to orient himself. He was still tangled in the parachute, but the world around him seemed strangely alien. Thick, twisted vines hung from the trees, and the air was thick with humidity. The distant calls of unknown creatures echoed in the distance, sending an involuntary chill down his spine. He had never seen a place like this before. Groaning, Jonathan pushed himself to his feet, his head spinning from the sudden motion. The pain from the wound on his forehead throbbed with each heartbeat, but it was nothing compared to the agony of realizing he was stranded on an alien world. His starfighter had been destroyed in the crash, leaving nothing but smoldering wreckage somewhere in the jungle. His survival depended on finding shelter, food, and most importantly, a way to get off this planet before the very forces caught up with him. His first priority was survival. The secondary mission, the data he had been carrying, was lost to him now. There was no way of knowing if it had reached the human resistance. The transmission system had likely been damaged in the crash, leaving him with only the most basic tools: his rifle, a few ration packs, and a medkit. Jonathan scanned the surroundings, his eyes searching the thick underbrush for any signs of life. In this kind of environment, he knew that staying still wasn't an option. The enemy could be watching from the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. His hand instinctively gripped his rifle as he took in the unfamiliar landscape. There was a strange beauty to the planet, but it wasn't a beauty that Jonathan had time to admire. The trees were massive, their trunks covered in strange glowing moss. The sky above was a surreal shade of purple, and the sun, if that's what it was, cast a faint, otherworldly glow through the foliage. He had never seen anything like it, and it filled him with a sense of awe and trepidation. This was not a place meant for human habitation. As he made his way through the dense jungle, Jonathan could feel the weight of his situation pressing down on him. Every step seemed to echo in the silence, and the air was so thick with humidity that his clothes stuck to his skin. His eyes darted around, constantly on edge, anticipating an attack that could come from anywhere. He had been trained to survive in hostile environments, but this world was different. This world didn't care if he was trained or not. Suddenly, a low growl reached his ears, and Jonathan's heart skipped a beat. He froze in place, his senses sharpening as his rifle moved instinctively into his hands. The growl grew louder, closer now, and Jonathan's instincts told him that he wasn't alone. He crouched low to the ground, moving silently through the underbrush. His breathing was shallow, and his focus was absolute. He needed to know what was out there, and whether it posed a threat to him. Through the thick foliage, Jonathan spotted a massive shape moving toward him. The creature was unlike anything he had seen before. It was a hulking, six-legged predator, its scales glistening in the dim light. It had sharp, jagged claws and teeth that gleamed like knives. The creature moved with terrifying speed, its eyes scanning the ground for any signs of prey. Jonathan's pulse raced as he realized that he had to make a choice. He could engage the creature, taking the risk of a deadly confrontation, or he could wait it out, hoping it would move past him without noticing. Neither option was ideal. But Jonathan knew that if he didn't act now, the creature might not give him the opportunity to choose. The predator let out another growl, its attention suddenly shifting toward the nearby alien village Jonathan had spotted from the air. A group of reptilian humanoids, their green and purple scales reflecting the strange light of the alien sun, appeared from the jungle. The creature's focus shifted again, its eyes locking onto the group. They had no idea what was about to strike. The humanoids scattered in panic, their movements erratic as they ran for cover. But there was one among them, a young female warrior, who stood her ground, a simple spear gripped tightly in her hand. Jonathan couldn't believe what he was seeing. The young woman seemed ready to face the massive predator, with nothing but a primitive weapon and a defiant gaze. Jonathan knew he had a choice to make: ignore them and save his own skin, or risk everything to help these strangers. His fingers tightened around his rifle as he made his decision. He was a soldier, and soldiers didn't leave people to die when they could help. Without thinking, he sprang into action, moving quickly toward the scene, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The warriors stand. Jonathan moved swiftly, his rifle clutched firmly in his hands. The jungle around him felt oppressive, the thick foliage closing in as the growl of the massive predator reverberated through the trees. His mind raced, trying to calculate his best course of action. The young warrior, a female from the village, stood her ground in defiance, her spear gripped tightly in her hands, poised for battle. Her eyes were locked onto the oncoming threat, unblinking, focused on the creature charging toward her. Jonathan's heart pounded in his chest. His training had always prepared him for combat, but he had never faced anything like this. The predator was a monstrous, six-legged beast, far larger and more powerful than any animal he had encountered on Earth. Its massive claws dug into the earth as it stalked toward the young warrior, its razor-sharp teeth gleaming under the alien sunlight. The creature was a predator, and the woman was its prey. The odds were not in her favor. Jonathan took a deep breath, trying to calm the racing thoughts in his mind. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he couldn't afford hesitation. He had made a choice. He would not let this warrior face certain death alone, not when he could do something about it. His eyes darted from the creature to the woman, assessing the scene with military precision. The predator was closing in, its attention entirely on the young warrior. Her stance was strong, but there was a clear sense of desperation in her eyes. She wasn't foolish, but she was outmatched. Her spear, though a weapon of honor, seemed like a toothpick against the sheer mass of the creature. Jonathan's fingers tightened around the rifle's trigger. There was no time to waste. The moment the creature lunged, he would have to be ready. He aimed his rifle, his sight locking onto the predator's massive body. The creature's eyes locked with his for a brief moment, as if it had sensed a new threat. but it didn't pause in its advance. Time seemed to slow as Jonathan steadied his breath. He could feel the weight of his decision, the gravity of the consequences if he failed. This was not just about his survival anymore. It was about protecting someone who had risked her life, someone who didn't even know him. But that didn't matter. He was a soldier, and soldiers didn't leave their comrades behind, even if they were strangers. As the creature lunged, Jonathan's finger pulled the trigger. The rifle's discharge was deafening in the quiet of the jungle, a bright flash lighting up the dense green underbrush. The shot tore into the predator's side, causing it to stagger and howl in pain. The creature let out a guttural roar, its massive form twisting in the air as it turned toward Jonathan. The young warrior reacted instantly. With a fierce war cry, she dashed toward the predator, using the distraction caused by Jonathan's shot to close the distance. Her spear was thrust forward with incredible precision, striking deep into the creature's chest. The force of the blow sent the predator reeling backward, but it was not yet defeated. Jonathan quickly adjusted his aim, firing once more. This time, the shot struck the creature's head, directly in the eye. The predator shrieked, the sound piercing the air, as it dropped to the ground with a heavy thud, lifeless. Silence followed the chaos of the battle. The jungle felt eerily still in the aftermath of the fight, the only sounds being the distant calls of unseen creatures. Jonathan exhaled slowly, his breath shaky as he lowered his rifle. He looked toward the young warrior, who stood panting but unscathed. Her eyes met his, and for a moment there was nothing but understanding between them. She had stood her ground, and he had stood beside her. It was a bond forged in battle, however brief. Jonathan stepped forward, his boots crunching on the ground. "You did well," he said, his voice hoarse from the adrenaline. The young warrior didn't immediately respond. She stood, her gaze still on the fallen predator, her hand clutching the spear as if she was unsure whether to let go or keep it raised. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm yet tinged with something Jonathan couldn't quite place. "I was prepared to die," she said simply, as if the idea was nothing more than an inevitable truth. "I never thought a human would intervene." Jonathan nodded, acknowledging her strength. "I'm not here to let anyone die if I can help it." The warrior turned to face him fully, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if taking in his every word and movement. "Then you are not like the others. The others do not come to our aid. They only watch." Jonathan didn't fully understand what she meant, but he could feel the weight of her words. There was a sense of disillusionment in her voice, an unspoken truth that humanity's reputation didn't extend here, not on this alien planet. In a world where survival was the only law, perhaps humans were seen as nothing more than outsiders, too weak to survive on their own. Yet here, Jonathan was, standing beside this warrior, having saved her life. The moment was broken when a low growl echoed from the jungle. Jonathan's eyes flicked toward the sound, his rifle at the ready. It wasn't the predator they had just slain, but something else, something larger. The young warrior didn't flinch. Instead, she lowered her spear and stepped toward Jonathan. "We need to go," she said. "More will come. You should come with me to the village. The council will want to speak to you." Jonathan hesitated for only a moment. His instincts told him that he should stay alert, stay on the move, but the thought of a safe haven, a place where he might find answers, overpowered his hesitation. "I could use a place to rest," he said. "Lead the way." The journey to the village was a quiet one, with Jonathan keeping close to the young warrior. She led him through the dense jungle, moving with ease through the underbrush, while Jonathan struggled to keep up. Despite his military training, the alien world was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The plants were unfamiliar, the sounds foreign, and the dense foliage often seemed to close in around him as if trying to swallow him whole. After what seemed like hours, they arrived at the village. Jonathan had expected primitive structures, but what he saw was beyond his expectations. The village was small but organized, nestled within the thick trees and protected by high wooden walls. The homes were made of natural materials, with stone foundations and roofs thatched from the surrounding trees. There was a sense of harmony with the land here, a stark contrast to the harsh, utilitarian structures he was accustomed to on Earth. The villagers watched Jonathan's arrival with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Most of them were humanoid in shape, but had reptilian features, scales covering their skin, sharp claws, and slit pupil eyes that seemed to miss nothing. The women, as he had noticed earlier, walked freely, unashamed of their nakedness, their bodies strong and capable. The men, too, moved with a grace that belied their rough appearance. The young warrior, still clutching her spear, led him to the center of the village, where an elder sat waiting. The elder was larger than the others, his scales a deeper shade of green, and his eyes gleamed with an intelligence that made Jonathan pause for a moment. This was the leader of the Terrians, the one who would decide whether he would be allowed to stay or whether his presence would be considered a threat. The young warrior spoke first, her voice respectful but firm. "This human saved me from the predator. He fought by my side." The elder studied Jonathan, his eyes sharp. "You are a stranger in our land," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Why should we trust you?" Jonathan stood tall, meeting the elder's gaze. "I'm here to survive. I'm not here to harm you or your people." The elder's gaze softened slightly, though it was clear that he was not yet convinced. "Survival, yes, but survival is a game for the strong, human. You must prove you are strong if you wish to stay." Jonathan knew what was coming. He had faced trials before, and this would be no different. But this time, it wasn't just his life at stake. It was his chance to make a difference in a world where the odds were stacked against him. Proving strength in a world of uncertainty. The elder's words hung heavy in the air, and Jonathan felt the weight of them pressing down on his shoulders. The Terrians, this strange, reptilian species, had their own rules, their own code of survival. Strength was everything. It was the currency of life in this harsh world. He wasn't sure what they meant by proving his strength, but he had no intention of backing down. If he wanted to survive here, to earn the trust of these creatures, he had to play by their rules. The elder studied him for a long time, his piercing gaze never leaving Jonathan. The silence between them was thick, as if the entire village was holding its breath. Jonathan remained calm, his posture straight, his mind focused. He had faced hostile alien species before, though not in such a primitive and brutal context. Here, everything seemed raw, more elemental, more primal. There was no room for weakness. Finally, the elder spoke, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "You saved one of our own, but that does not mean you are one of us. You must show us your strength if you wish to stay." Jonathan nodded, understanding the challenge. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady. The elder's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "Good. Come. The council will decide your fate after the trials." Without another word, the elder turned and gestured for Jonathan to follow. The young warrior who had helped him earlier, whom Jonathan now understood to be someone important to the village, walked beside him. Her face was unreadable, but Jonathan could sense the respect she held for him, even if she didn't entirely trust him yet. As they walked through the village, Jonathan noticed more of the Terrians, their reptilian features and powerful builds standing out as they went about their daily lives. Some were working together to construct shelters, while others tended to animals or gathered resources from the surrounding jungle. The village was alive with activity, and Jonathan couldn't help but marvel at the self-sufficiency of the Terrians. They had carved out an existence on this harsh world, and everything about their lives spoke of resilience and strength. The council grounds were located at the center of the village, a large circular area surrounded by tall stone pillars adorned with intricate carvings. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the earthy aroma of the jungle. The Terrians who had gathered there were seated on low stone benches, their eyes focused on Jonathan as he entered. At the far end of the circle, the elder took his place, his expression unreadable. Jonathan stood in the center, feeling the intensity of the gazes on him. The council members, each of them older and more imposing than the last, observed him with silent judgment. The tension in the air was palpable, as if they were waiting for him to make a mistake. He could feel their expectations, their ancient traditions weighing heavily on him. "Stranger," the elder said, his voice carrying across the circle, "you have come to our land uninvited. You have saved one of our own, but that does not make you one of us. If you wish to stay, you must prove your worth. The trials are not for the faint of heart. You must survive them if you hope to earn your place here." Jonathan's pulse quickened, but he kept his composure. "I understand," he replied. The elder gestured toward a series of stone structures positioned around the council grounds. Some were simple, others more complex, but each one seemed designed for a specific purpose. The air seemed to hum with the promise of what was to come. "The first trial," the elder continued, "is one of endurance and survival. You will face the creatures of our world, those that hunt and kill. If you can defeat them, you will have proven yourself worthy of our respect." Jonathan's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the stone arena ahead. He had fought against alien beasts before, but these creatures were different. He could feel it in his bones, the raw, untamed power of this world, a place where even the strongest soldiers could fall. "You will enter the arena," the elder said. "The creature will be released, and you must survive its attack. Show us that you have the strength to face death, and still stand." Jonathan nodded, though his mind was already racing. The idea of facing a creature in an arena was nothing new. He had done it before in countless simulations and real combat situations, but this time it felt different. The stakes were higher, the sense of the unknown pressing against him. He had no idea what kind of creature awaited him, but he knew one thing for sure: he had to survive. Without another word, Jonathan was led toward the arena. The young warrior who had helped him earlier stayed close, her eyes watching him with a mix of curiosity and concern. She didn't speak as they walked, but Jonathan could feel her questions in the silence between them. What was he thinking? Would he survive? Could he handle the trials? As they reached the entrance to the arena, the young warrior paused, her gaze lingering on Jonathan. "You are a warrior, like us," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You may not be Tarian, but your strength is your own. You will need more than just your weapons to survive." Jonathan glanced at her, surprised by the intensity of her words. "I'll remember that," he said, his voice low. With a final nod, the warrior stepped back, allowing Jonathan to enter the arena. The ground beneath his boots was solid, a smooth stone floor that felt cool to the touch. He could feel the anticipation building in his chest as the large stone door to the arena began to close behind him. The air was still, silent except for the distant sounds of the jungle. Jonathan's eyes swept over the arena, searching for any signs of movement. His senses were on high alert, every muscle in his body tense and ready for action. He didn't know what creature was about to be released, but he did know that the only way out of here was to defeat it. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and the massive stone gates at the far end of the arena rumbled open. Out of the darkness emerged the creature, a terrifying, hulking beast with multiple legs and gleaming claws that could tear through stone. Its scales shimmered in the dim light, and its eyes burned with a predatory rage. It was a predator, pure and simple. Jonathan's grip on his rifle tightened, and he quickly assessed the creature's movements. The creature lunged forward, its claws scraping the stone ground, and Jonathan didn't hesitate. He sprinted to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's swipe as it slashed at him with lightning speed. The fight had begun. Jonathan's training kicked in as he moved, using his speed and agility to stay one step ahead of the creature. He fired several rounds at the beast's exposed flank, the shots making contact, but only slowing it down. The creature roared in fury and lashed out, its powerful limbs crashing through the arena as it pursued him relentlessly. Jonathan's mind raced, searching for a weakness, an opening. The creature was fast, but it was also massive, and its size could be used against it. He darted between pillars, using the environment to his advantage, constantly staying just out of reach of the creature's claws. But the creature wasn't the only danger. As it rampaged through the arena, it triggered traps hidden in the stone floor, and Jonathan had to be careful not to step into them. The ground beneath his feet shifted, and suddenly he found himself standing on a pressure plate that activated a series of spikes shooting up from the ground. He jumped to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly trap, and fired another round at the creature. The battle was far from over, but Jonathan's resolve had never been clearer. He wasn't just fighting for his life now. He was fighting to prove himself, to show the Terrians that even a human soldier could survive on their world. As the creature closed in again, Jonathan took a deep breath and made his move. He wasn't just going to survive this trial. He was going to win it.